Hello and welcome to the second episode of the All Walks of Life podcast. In this podcast, I'm doing something different. I'm going to be reciting one of my poems that I'd written back in high school, which is titled Following. But before I get into that, I would just like to give a tribute to two great souls that Indian cinema has lost over the last 2 days. That's Irrfan Khan and Rishi Kapoor. I feel that they were great actors and they did a lot for Indian cinema. So I would just like to have a moment for that. Getting into today's podcast, this is the poem I've titled Following is an inspiration from Seamus Heaney's work. Seamus Heaney was an Irish poet who wrote poems such as Follower, Digging, Death of a Naturalist, among others. That really had a profound influence on me when I was growing up. And this poem titled Following is a perspective of his father, Patrick Heaney, writing to Seamus Heaney of how he never understood his work, and if he had to ever write a poem, it's my perspective on how it would go. So some things I've observed is that because I've been a big fan of Seamus Heaney's work, I have tried to imitate his writing style. So I've tried to keep the poem in quartlets, and moreover, something that could be observed in Seamus Heaney's work was that whenever he was describing his father, the type of diction and syntax he used was much more stronger than things he described about himself. So this time I've kind of flipped the switch. So this time, writing as Patrick Heaney, I've made the syntax more stronger for when he's describing his son Seamus Heaney, and a little less when he's describing himself. Lastly, the themes I'll be observing in this poem are of admiration, respect, and the title is Following, which is an inspiration from one of his poems called Follower. Thank you, and enjoy the podcast. Following by Ishan Agarwal. I perch onto a pen like I haven't done before, for it's this very pen that gives me the strength which is much stronger than what the spade will ever give me. For it's this pen that embraces all the good that is there in the world today. I look up to a shining light, one which is ever present and overflowing, one which is bright, whereas I am dark. For it's this new lease of life that I have given birth to. It's this very light that brings a sense of optimism for all around him. Yet it's us who fail to find him. For what this light brings is unpatrolled, as it's this very light which gives life to the stones. For it's this artistry which is overflowing, on which is breathtaking, as it gropes the heart, yet is delivered through the hand. However, it's no ordinary hand. It's a hand which holds a pen, unlike I ever did. As for every spade, there is a pen, for its power is uncontrollable, something one cannot resist. Yet there are some who force their physical manifestations on art. For what right do they have? I always had it easier, yet he wrote otherwise. It should have been me to worship this purist, yet it was him admiring me. For he depicted my sinking spade better than the Titanic, yet it was the spade that people liked more, which seemed peculiar to me, yet he was the hand that governed the span. For he thought that I was a saint, yet he was the one holding on to the pen. He depicted my hardship, whereas he went through the real struggle. For it's he who adapted, whereas I took things on a surface level. He was the one paying attention to the cold smell of potato mold, whereas I never considered his pen. For I did find the perfect turf, yet that wasn't a patch on his perfect line. As I was a mere man holding a spade, whereas he had the powers of a pen. For he was the perfectionist, as I was a mere man with a spade. It was his endearment towards Mother Nature, for I never envisaged a thought about the summer's blood. For he was fascinated by it. I wouldn't have even seen myself being fascinated by poetry. Yet he was from my surroundings. From what I expected, he gave much more. He felt intimate with nature, something I never did with poetry. For he knew the lovely canful smelt of rot, yet he kept persevering. He was the one who portrayed me as a model professional, yet it was him who acted like one. He even made Jim Evans surprised, yet it was he who was actually the most. For he took whatever came his way, for I could never imagine myself being able to cover from the losses. He went through, for he was the master, the proprietor. He shouldered through manhood in a way I would never be able to. He wasn't one for rituals, yet obeyed it as a task. Even so, in that he gained from it, like a spade holder could never do. For he escaped nothing. The pressure of politics and fame never overshadowed his work, as he disposed like Guna, unlike many after or before him. For he was the one to blame nature, and rightfully so, for summer had taken away from him like no one else. Someone who Seamus dearly called Rachel. It is this very life that I have given birth to. Never could I have known what it would be. For I am happy now, as this new lease of life is someone I call son. And I will continue to do so until the day is long. For what my son has given to me, I may never be able to give back. And it is so like him that he has still, after all these years, considered my spade as good as his pen. For Seamus, it is pleasure that he seeks, from the brilliant writing that he does. This somewhere down below really does comfort me, and I hope that this feeling continues forever. It isn't quite every day when someone as special as Seamus enters your life. Yes, yet it's us who aren't able to value the magnificent beast that he is. He completes the guile to my draft. I perch onto a pen like I haven't done before, for it's this very pen that gives me the strength which is much stronger than the spade will ever give me, for it's this very pen that embraces all the good that is there in the world today. Thank you.